And I've got a simple discussion plan for us because we wanted to focus on how do we decide what matters when everything feels disruptive. So I wanted to start by talking about focus, because it's not hard to see where things are changing. It's actually not that hard to keep up with trends. We don't need more information, really. What we need is to understand what matters most and deserves our attention. So in a world full of headlines and hype, what do you think is getting too much attention right now? And what deserves more attention than it might be getting? And I want to start with you, Bill, and then we're going to go to Kelli and get your perspective from an industry level, and then we'll go to Steve. So what is getting too much attention, and what deserves more attention than it might be receiving today?
Right. So this works better, actually, if you ask the other people, because then I can be the counterpoint. But I know a lot of people think that AI is getting too much attention. Mm-hmm. And when we had a brief conversation beforehand, I told you that my opinion is it's actually underhyped, because the likely impact is so significant, what's coming. I think one thing that people in business don't know a lot about is the OpenClaw revolution that's happened within the last 60 days. Mm-hmm. You can go on YouTube and watch one of thousands of videos about examples of OpenClaw and what the capabilities are for business. And it gets your mind thinking about where maybe this conference a year from now, it's going to be completely different. So I think AI is probably one of the most significant things. And then lastly, I'll just say I kind of agree with the audience, because I think the digital number 2 category in your poll behind AI, we think about that as embedded lending. So it's really, the way we think about what digital lending means is, instead of companies working the way they do today, where employees are online in systems and customers are offline, all the way through the whole process, right? It's the employee that's onboarding, typing in the system, calling, meeting, texting, whatever with the customer's offline, the employee's on, all the way through credit, all the way through operations, documentation, funding, servicing, throughout the whole loan repayment cycle. The employees are typing notes in the system, calling the customer, emailing the customer. What the digital means is flipping that so that the customer is online from beginning to end. And that totally changes, right, the need for employees and the way that whole workflow is going to work. Mm-hmm. So we agree that's another thing that maybe right now I would have said is underhyped, but obviously that's on the mind of the audience.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring that up, Bill. So, and I do want to get back to the OpenClaw topic, but one of the things I think that you're bringing up is the need to be really thinking about how do we reimagine what we do? Because, the old way was the internal, employee doing all the things end to end, and now because of AI and digital and all of the technology capabilities that we have, but also because society has shifted and customer expectations have shifted as well, I think we need to ask a new question, like what type of company can we be because of what's possible now? And I think that gets into a different level of innovation. That's not just tech, it's business model innovation, and I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
I totally agree, Deb. And optimization is one thing, and I think that's really, having run a business for a long time prior to the one I'm in now, that's really all I did for 20 years was business optimization. We turned one dial on the machine, we checked the output, and we continually tried to refine and improve it. It could have been bringing in new sales automation software, it could have been something with our CRM, it could have been something with our system of record, it could have been something with our workflows, but it was all just optimization. And I think really innovation is something fundamentally different than that today, especially. After you watch these OpenClaw videos, you'll conclude that it's going to be much bigger. And unless your company is thinking about empowering its innovation committees or groups or teams, that it's okay to say whole parts of our business aren't needed anymore. Things that we do right now, we should consider stopping doing them, and there's a whole different alternative path, then you're really not innovating today. because there's that optimization versus innovation difference, which I think is just huge, and it's never been bigger.
Yeah, it's very disruptive, but it's also a huge opportunity for those who are bold enough to rethink how we do business. Could you, for our audience members who are not familiar with the open claw phenomenon, could you just kind of give your take on what that is?
Right. So this is something created by one individual, which is perhaps one of the most amazing things, right? That this isn't like a department or a company or some group of one of the big tech companies that came up with this. One individual built this product, which after 3 name changes and a threat of lawsuit by Claude, Anthropic, ended up being called OpenClaw. And it has 250,000, over 250,000 stars on GitHub, which if you're a software developer, that's where you upload your software and keep and track all your software uploads, and that's remarkable. And it was the shortest period of time in history by far of GitHub. One person created this. And you've probably heard about there being a shortage of Mac Minis and Mac Studio computers, and how Apple had this windfall where they've been just selling everything they have that's not nailed down. It's a Mac Mini or a Mac Studio, and it's because of this OpenClaw technology. And it enables you to run the large language models, which many of us are familiar with because we've done queries and put in prompts and gotten answers back. But you can actually run the model without all the restrictions and the limitations that are present when you interact with those systems via the internet through a browser. So you can actually have these things running 24/7. You can actually run local models, by the way, which is a whole other powerful thing. You can run Llama or Kimi 2.5 or some of the other models that you can run locally, so it's not even connected to the internet, and there's 0 risk. So this also has implications for financial services and insurance and other businesses because of that capability. But essentially, they allow you to do tasks and do repetitive tasks, to program tasks, and you program the OpenClaw server to use the intelligence of the AI and to do things for you. And it actually just runs 24/7 doing things for you. And it can communicate with you through Telegram or through a number of other ways that it can communicate. And like I have one running now, and I could just tell it to do something for me, and it would take care of it, and it would text me right back on my Telegram. You can communicate with it via voice. You can have it call you. Mine can call me. It has in 11 Labs a technology where it does voice recognition to make sure it's me to authenticate before it takes commands from me. It's quite sophisticated, actually. But there's almost nothing that's imaginable that you couldn't build with it, is the point. And
it totally changes the game.
Changes the game.
Absolutely. So, Kelli, I'm curious from your perspective. So you just returned from the ELFA Executive Roundtable, and I know there was a big trend scanning activity with a diverse group of executives participating. So, same question to you. What do you think is getting too much attention, and what deserves more attention than it might be giving?
It's an interesting question to think about. And 6 months ago, I would have told you AI is probably getting too much attention, but just in the last several months, especially in the last few weeks of ELFA conferences, for those of you who have been at some recently, I have learned more about AI in a very short amount of time. So I tend to agree with Bill that it's probably not getting as much attention, even though 6 months ago I probably would have said the opposite, just because it's moving so fast. I do think from the association's perspective, in terms of content development, especially for a gathering like this, where the audience is so skilled already and learning more all the time, it's hard to keep up with content to get ahead of where you all are. So we appreciate your feedback and what that looks like, because scaling content for the innovation audience is much different than scaling it for other conferences that might not be as advanced in that scope. What is getting not enough attention? I tend to think the regulatory landscape, I saw in your poll, that was one of the lower areas where people weren't expecting that to impact their business very much in the next 12 months. I think they'll be surprised a year from now at what that might look like. So I would probably suggest that people spend a little bit more time and attention on what's coming down the horizon in terms of regulation or legislation, and how that might impact business so that we can all collectively come together and make sure that the impact is positive.
Awesome. So, Steve, same question over to you. You bring a different lens as a technology company. So what are you saying? What's getting too much and what's not getting enough?
So I think I've changed my answer 4 times during this discussion as I've been listening. But as the out-and-out technologist on the panel, it may surprise you to hear from me that I think AI is getting too much attention in favor of the problems we're trying to solve. So by that I mean your problem that you're trying to solve in your organization is going to be very different potentially to your problem that you're trying to solve in your organization. So we're all scrambling around to understand what the art of the possible is with this technology. I suppose I'm a bit blessed as someone who's focused on technology, then I do my very best to keep up with AI and everything. And so I feel I've got a very strong handle on its capabilities. So now what I want to be really clear on is what problem we're trying to solve. And it may turn out that AI isn't the right answer for this particular problem. But you made a very good point about optimization. If you do take an approach where you're just looking to apply AI to something, you could end up optimizing. Transforming is where you may look at your existing process just as a guide to understand what the constraints are. So, and when you look at those constraints, they tend to fall into 1 or 2 categories. They're either structural constraints, like regulation, that you have to deal with. And if you want to overcome those, you normally have to engage as an industry, which you do a very good job of helping us all do. But the other ones are self-imposed constraints. And so if you can identify those and eradicate those, that can actually remove steps in that process. So instead of making each step faster, you actually change the process that you do. But if you'll allow me, I want to address one of the other answers that I had, which is the kind of aura of job threats, and that this is somehow threatening to jobs. And I work at a technology company, and creating code is now something that the AI models can do. So as a software developer, developing code, that you could forgive many of the employees in my organization to have fear about what's going to happen next in their jobs. But the thing that I tell every employee, not just the software developers, is that, do you ever come into work with your line manager saying, I want you to do less work today? We always have more and more that we want to do. So this technology helps us be more productive. And that's the key thing. And one of the things that I think is critical is developing an AI culture within your organization. So making sure that everyone's AI literate. They're very comfortable with the tools and they make it part of their organization. One of my, the people I respect most in AI is a gentleman called Andrew Ng of Google Brain. He's the founder of Google Brain and one of the leading men in leading people in AI. And he gave a speech at Davos where he was talking about software developer jobs. And, but he also expanded that to all jobs and saying that they fall into one of 4 categories when you look at your employees. You have senior people who are AI literate, and those are the gold. And that's because today, as we've heard, AI makes mistakes, and senior people spot it, and they can adapt. You have senior people who are not AI literate and are considered resistors, and that's challenging for your organization because they're expensive resources and they're not helping you achieve the productivity gains that you want to make. Then you might have the more juniors who are AI literate, which is great, but they won't spot the mistakes, so they can go somewhere bad fast with the tools in their hand. And then you have juniors without AI who are fast becoming considered unemployable. And indeed, some of the statistics show that the employment rates of graduates, since actually going back to the launch of the original ChatGPT to the public, has decreased over time.
I think you bring up a really important issue, and that's the human side of innovation. And we talk about AI literacy, but what does that even mean in a world where AI is moving so fast? And I've been thinking about this a lot because I hear from a lot of leaders, I feel like I'm behind, I can't keep up, and I feel myself like I'm a geek and I love this stuff, and taking it in constantly, and I feel like I can't keep up. And it stands to reason because an exponential technology is definitely going to move way faster than I can as a human, and it feels like every other day my mind is blown by some new advance, like this whole OpenClaw thing, and there was a run on Mac Minis. Well, now there's another advance where there's a cloud-based opportunity so that we don't have to try and find these Mac Minis to run it. And so, like, the advances are like snowballing. It's amazing. And so I've realized, you know what? I don't think I can keep up. The thing that I've decided I need to work on is how do I raise the quality of my judgment as I'm navigating uncertainty and get really clear, like you said, Steve, about what are the problems that are valuable to solve, and why are they valuable, and for whom, and who is impacted in the process of solving. And I think that we need to come up a level into systems thinking with foresight as we're doing these things so that we're not just rebuilding the past on new cool technology, optimizing, or even just modernizing, frankly. I mean, that's where a lot of us are. But who can we become because we have all of this capability? And who do we want to be? And I think that there's so much possibility that's open to us because of this technology, but it does take a different way of thinking. Can you just touch a little bit on what you mean by AI literacy? Like, for anyone in this room that wanted to raise AI literacy in their team, what's a step they could take?
Well, one of the things is we centered on a corporate plan for one of the models, happened to be Anthropic's Claude. And it has different capabilities, the chat capability. But if you get the desktop version, then it can integrate with all of your Microsoft apps, and so you can get knockout, PowerPoint presentations, get documents written to template structures and things like that. So I first of all just wanted to get rolled out to all staff, and gave a town hall where we showed the art of the possible, what you can do with this, and then encouraged them to make use of it. We administered it centrally so that we could tie it down so that it does things like not submit your data for training. So and by being on a corporate plan, the danger is if you don't have a corporate plan, then people use their personal plans, and those don't have necessarily the safeguards switched on that Paul Zakopoulos pointed to earlier this morning.
Yeah.
So, So I think that's the first step, is if you're not doing that, if not everybody in your organization has access to a corporate account of one of these tools, then I think that's an important first step.
I think that gets back to the theme that we were just discussing, and that's focus. I mean, you had to focus first on where are we going to align on the model that we're going to use, and then focus on what are the guardrails that we're going to put in place for our users so that we can get them started, and then also focusing some time on helping people understand the art of the possible. And that's something that I don't see a lot of companies do very often, because often we're really caught up in the day-to-day. So you're here today and tomorrow exploring the art of the possible. It's a great opportunity to take in some new insights that you can bring back home with you. So one of the things that I wanted to get into with this executive panel is future readiness. So, the future can feel scary, but it can also feel really exciting. And we saw that the audience feels that AI is going to shape the future most, followed by digital finance capabilities. And so I'm just curious. So when it comes to readiness to take on that future, we were talking about just even AI literacy. That some companies, that's the step they're on. From where you sit today, given all the things that are going on, where does your organization feel most ready to take on the future, and where do you feel least ready? That's going to be the central question for this next segment. And I'm curious, Kelli, if you could start just commenting on what are you seeing across the industry, but you could also speak to ELFA with everything going on. Where are you feeling most ready, and where do you feel least ready?
So from my perspective, and I also manage the Foundation's workforce development initiatives with outreach to universities and students who are looking to come into equipment finance as an industry, one of the things that comes up time and again when we are talking about AI, whether it's digital disruption, embedded finance, all of the technological advances across the industry, it always piques the interest of the students. And it, over time, has given us the perspective that we're not just talking about equipment finance anymore. We want to attract students who are studying entrepreneurship and software development and marketing and all the other fields and roles that support equipment finance going forward. So what we see in terms of readiness is an industry that is evolving and changing, not necessarily looking for finance students in the traditional accounting and business management, but students who can come in and evolve forward. That the younger, newer generation is actually going to be the ones teaching those who are in management and executive level roles how to use these tools and advance the industry forward in new ways. That's just what I'm seeing across the university spectrum when we go out and speak to students. Mm-hmm. It's also really interesting to be in those campus visits with executives who are being surrounded by students who want to come into this industry and bring forth their new ideas because they are digital natives and most of us are not. These are things that we've had to be intentional about learning, and they're coming to it very naturally. So naturally, their way of thinking, being able to be have a totally different mindset about how a company can meet the needs of its customers and be a successful organization internally as well as externally, it's just changing so quickly all the time. And it comes from having opportunities to practice. As Steve was talking about having, the internal structures, whether companies are spending time before they say, oh, hey, can you leverage these AI resources to solve this customer's problem? They have to be comfortable with the tools themselves to do that. So creating time and space for employees to have those experiences is super helpful. And then there are companies, some of you in this room, who are doing amazing things. I know you've had students, Bill, come in and help from an experiential learning perspective to say, okay, here's what we're trying to solve for. Now you students who understand way more about AI and all of these other resources and tools, you tell us how you would solve the problem. And generally, they came up with some really great ideas.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting perspective because when you run into somebody who has never known a world where Google didn't exist, they're going to think different. Their paradigms are going to be different, and they're going to have maybe, we bring some biases to the table because we can continually go, well, this is how we've always done things, or in the past we've done it this way, but they have an opportunity to bring some really fresh thinking to the table. Bill, I'm curious what you think about this, because I know you have some young people on your team and you've interacted with younger people in ideation. What are your thoughts on that topic? And then I want to go to the future readiness topic with you.
So I agree with Kelly's point. I think sometimes fresh eyes is a huge advantage. So we actually go even a step farther than what Kelly was suggesting, and we'll invite we're proximate to Cornell in upstate New York. So last year we had 6 Cornell computer science students for the summer intern with us, working full time all summer. And we actually tried to find out, first of all, what their interests are so we could find things that were of interest to them. And then when we paired them up with people that worked in areas that they had interest in, we actually tried not to give them a project. We tried to help them tell us what might be fixed, what might be better. And then we built some really cool stuff out of that. I mentioned this morning to another group that we built this insurance AI agent, which actually tracks all insurance certificates, and it sends emails, it reads emails, receives and reads emails, it makes calls, it talks to people on the phone, tracks insurance certificates, and eventually, we've essentially got it now. It's in production, and it essentially is infinitely scalable and can replace a department of people who maybe in a very large company used to do that. There's not really any risk, right? I mean, it's insurance certificates. It's not like we're sending out social security numbers or something. So there are tons of things like that that you can do. We built one that's for our support line. We have 24/7 support, but we catch with an AI inbound calls. We didn't used to do that. Last summer we built it, and we took a whole bunch of recordings from many, many years of support calls that have been recorded and transcribed, and did the training. And now sometimes our internal people look stuff up if they're on the line live with somebody in it, because it's much quicker than actually sometimes they can answer a question. And those are just two small examples, but like you can get real stuff out of it, and you can move pretty quickly. And I think the fresh perspective is sometimes helpful. We were saying earlier in a different session that sometimes people who've done a job for a long time, it's a little harder. And then that creates a sense of momentum and enthusiasm and excitement about what's possible. Because ultimately, I guess what I want to say on the business readiness side is this is an optimistic time. I mean, this is by far the most exciting time of my whole career right now. And nobody's behind. No one in this room is behind anyone else because it's such early days. If you look at all the people who are familiar with AI, that's a tiny percent of the global population that's even queried on a free exchange with ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude or any of the engines in Asia. It's a tiny fraction that's even put in a query. And nothing is implemented in our business to automate these things. We're right at the very beginning of it. And it's going to come very quickly, and it's going to be tremendously impactful. And you don't need a computer science background. In fact, we learned that sometimes the history student that got mixed in with the group of CS students was actually much more beneficial, because the CS students were always thinking, well, I have to program it. And you don't. You have to query it, and you have to ask it, and you have to ask it for help, and you have to ask it for direction about what you should build before you start building it. And those things sometimes don't come natively even to young computer science students. So it's early days. It's so exciting. I mean, if any part of your job was ever AI coming in and doing the same thing every day, we're going into a period where it could be super exciting. And just think too, there are going to be some people who have trouble and are slow adopters, but that's all the more benefit for early movers. Right, that the sustained period of early mover advantage in this industry, I think, is going to be longer than normal, because some people are going to have real trouble with it. So, get your company to be the early mover, be the person in your company that drives it. You'll become invaluable. Become the expert, because it's more fun than you'll ever have, and you don't need a tech background to do it. It's really a great time.
So I wonder, when it comes to future readiness, is it more about the mindset or the tools? Because it sounds like there's something.
I think the thing that I've heard, and I listen to a lot of talks, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, I listen to various different people you probably listen to too, Deb. And I think you just have to use the tools, and you have to play with them, and you have to actually just, and it's not really painful. It's actually like so much fun that hours go by and you're like, oh my God, I thought I was doing this for 10 minutes. And it's not just queries, like just build an OpenClaw server. You mentioned there's new things coming. You can do them cloud-based, and there are, like if you're going to put a lot of personal stuff in there, there's sometimes a little more risk, which is why the Apple thing. But you can now, there's one for a Raspberry Pi. You can run a little tiny model on a Raspberry Pi, and that's within the last couple of weeks has come out.
Oh my gosh.
But just start playing with the stuff. Start watching YouTube videos about what people are doing with it. Start thinking about the opportunities. And then if the companies, for the people who are the leaders here, I think they should just be aware that you got to open it up. You got to let your people, like, somehow form some cross-functional teams for those people who are interested, and let them run a little bit. Because otherwise you could risk being in that second group that really does get left behind.
Yeah, and I think that there's a huge opportunity here to set up the right guardrails and guidance for your team and create a safe playground for people to learn. Because when it comes to this technology, it's not like the technology of the past where here's the manual, read the manual, follow the steps, and it does the same thing every time. This is all about curiosity. A little curiosity goes a long way. And all the examples that you just shared is about the curiosity. It was the curiosity of the next gen people coming into to bring their fresh perspective to the table, or asking new questions about existing processes or existing problems, or asking, just completely divergent questions about the problem to solve. And now we have a technology that can help us to produce solutions that have never been possible before at a speed that we've never experienced before. I was just yesterday messing around because, as Steve mentioned, I'm newly an author. And so I newly have a new problem to solve. It's a fun one, but I have to figure out, okay, well, if companies are bulk ordering books for their teams, how do I handle that? Well, you know, in my business, I've never had to have an inventory and order management process. And so I just hopped on to, you know, collaborate with Claude, and within minutes, while I was on the phone with Andrew, by the way, because I didn't know if I would get here or not, so I was preparing him to be my stunt double. But while I was on that conversation, Claude was actually building a system for me. And it was integrated between ordering and order fulfillment and shipping and inventory management, and also to make sure I was set up for taxes at the end of the year. That would have taken me hours and hours to figure out. And so, I mean, that's just a simple example and not even a very complex prompt. So I'm also very optimistic. I think, you know, it's easy to go to the doom and gloom side of things depending on where you're looking, but I saw a really interesting chart recently, and it might be the same one that you're referring to, that shows, like, you know, there's a dot for every like 3 million or 3 billion people, or 3 million people in the world, and only the bottom line of it is the active AI users today. And so we are just on the beginning. We haven't even really, you know, scratched the surface of what's possible and where we can go with AI. So given all that, Steve, let's talk future readiness from your perspective. So where do you and your organization feel most ready to take on the future, and where do you feel least ready?
Well, as I said before, I mean, I've worked very hard to try to stay up with current trends, although OpenClaw did catch me by you know, off guard. So Oracle Cloud Tier, they do a free tier, so stick it on that, then it doesn't mess up your own computer or anything like that, and then I like to know how things work, so how to play. But yeah, so AI capabilities today, I feel ready that I understand what it is today. What I'm not ready for, I think, is humans think in linear time. And we only expect things to get, you know, twice as good in twice the time. But the progress with this tooling is exponential. And, but so is the use of it. And the proof of the use of it is, so we've centered on Claude. And on Wednesday, it had a bit of a wobble. And it just made me think, recently I used to say internet access is like electricity now. I mean, when your internet goes down, it's a right pain. But now I think access to your AI tooling is like electricity. I mean, it needs to be there, it needs to be working. The other thing that I'm not ready for is what's going to happen in terms of the costs or the potential consolidation of these big AI giants. At the moment, my understanding is they're subsidizing these costs and that they need to all find a path through to profit. And that creates a lot of uncertainty in my mind. I've got to be careful about backing a particular horse, make sure whatever processes I do institute internally are substitutable for other tooling if something should happen. I mean, there was obviously the recent shock between OpenAI and Anthropic in relation to Trump's declaration. So all of these things, I mean, I can't foresee. So, but therefore, I have to have mitigations for them in my thinking.
Actually, that's a really important consideration. I'm reminded of the story of Klarna, and so a couple years ago, it was like the big headline that Klarna was replacing a whole bunch of customer service people with AI, and then the experience actually deteriorated so much that they then had to scramble to hire humans back again to raise the level of their customer experience, to get back up to standards. And, you know, I think we may not be ready for the ripple effect impacts of what we're doing with AI if we're not giving thought to that. why are we doing it? Why does it matter? What value does it bring? But also, who does it impact? And how? And why? And then come back again. Is this just because we can do something, should we? It should always be a question, and that's something that I'm curious about for the future. And then also, I'm concerned about cognitive offloading. And if we become really dependent on AI to do our thinking for us, there's studies going on already about how brains are changing through these interactions. And so I've heard people say the AI you're using today is the dumbest it will ever be. And my hope is that the humans that we're interacting with, that it's not the flip side. They're the smartest they'll ever be. I think that we need to really think about how we're using this so that it raises our intelligence and that we're continuing to make sure that we're using critical thinking as we're employing these tools to make the world a better place. I'm curious about filters. So we've talked about focus, we've talked about future readiness, and I have another F word for you, and it's filters. So when it feels like there's so much changing and there's so much pressure to chase the next thing, we know we need to experiment, we need to be curious, we need to get on this, but what are you deliberately not chasing right now, and why? And I'm going to start with Steve, and then we'll just kind of go down the row here. So what are you deliberately not focusing on?
Well, despite giving my grand speech on transformation versus optimization, what I'm not chasing is an absolute revolution in what I'm doing within my organization today, because of these future concerns, and also because I want to make sure all of my organization pedagogically learns the capabilities of this capability. So what I want to do is focus on the value problems early and demonstrate delivery of those first. Because what I have experienced is when I personally have gone too grand, I end up getting nowhere. So what I found is delivering use cases internally in our organization to improve our internal operations. It turns out there's a huge amount of iteration to go through all the edge cases and actually get to a point where it's robust and ready. And so starting off small to then get big is what I would suggest.
Have you found ways, have you found any tricks that help you decide what's worth pursuing and what's worth deferring? Well,
I'm a product guy, so there's some marvelous frameworks and product theory out there. Marty Kagan's Silicon Valley Product Group put some excellent texts on there about how to be product-minded, which is all about focusing on value. And he talks of the 4 product risks. I'm not going to enumerate them here, but basically it's a framework that allows you to think about the problem and make sure that you understand how value is going to be delivered before you even turn to the solutions, because that may change actually the tools and solution approach you take.
I think that's a really important takeaway. So Steve isn't starting with the tech. He's starting with the valuable problem to solve. And it sounds like you're also being really intentional about staying on purpose and focused in what you're building.
Yeah.
So Kelli, what are the filters for you? Like, how are you deciding what do we chase and what should we just absolutely not do?
So for me personally, as I'm learning more and exploring, I have filtered on not trying to do everything. I don't need to be the expert and utilize this across. I'm just trying to focus on the task at hand and the outcomes that evolve and build on the next thing that comes. I'm personally trying to stay focused on, I don't have to learn everything all at once. Just kind of staying here and utilizing it to get to the next thing. And that might just be my personal choice, because from the association's perspective, we're still very much in the learning phase internally, but also trying to leverage the content that we're sharing across the industry organization, and so many of you are teaching us where we can help with that focus. And because we are serving an audience that is at various levels, we're just going one phase at a time. So I would welcome being able to hear from others in the audience who maybe might suggest where ELFA can focus its time so that we can better refine and target the content that we're producing.
Awesome. So you know who to talk to in the hallway if you have an idea for ELFA. So Bill, how do you handle this? I mean, you're in a fast-paced world of fintech. There's a lot going on. There's a lot you could chase. How do you decide what to go after and what to say no to?
Right. I mean, we try to be long-term focused, so we try to focus on the two big things, which happen to be the same two that this whole industry is thinking about. That's one thing. I think, you know, so other than that, I guess you just try to be long-term focused on those things, right, and pick the things that, like, what ultimately is going to be a massive impact. Let's skip some of the little things and place the bets on those things that we think are coming. I sometimes mention too that, like, it's coming so fast that when we do things that don't quite work, we feel like we're on the right track. Because if the AI can't quite do it yet, we're building something worthwhile. If we build things that actually work out of the gate, like the two examples I gave you, maybe we're shooting too low, right? Because it's the capabilities are really every 3 to 6 months, I'm amazed at what more it can do than what I was already amazed at 3 months ago. Personally, I would just say real quickly that I just, like, it's not work to do this, but, like, I do all sorts of personal things on it. I'll say, well, I wonder if I could build something in my OpenClaw that would track this for me to do with health, or something to do with finances, or something personal that, you know, I wonder if I could build this. And I learned so much from it, and I learned so much about, wow, I could structure it this way, and I could improve the memory if I changed the memory structure this way. I'm not a developer. I mean, this is stuff everybody in this room could do. And you watch another video, and I get an idea. Wow, I could build this, you know, much more robust indexing engine in, and then I could download all this data in it. I could tell it to build me a CRM, which it does. And now it has this tremendous indexing capability, and it just built me a CRM, and it does all. And it's fun. So it's not work. My wife would say, you know, I'm abandoning some of my chores around the house. But you learn so much, and then that brings you the connection to, okay, I see the potential here. I know what this can do for our business and where this is going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the great opportunity right now. You know, if you try something right now and it doesn't work, you can actually put it on the shelf and come back to it, and you don't have to wait that long for the capability to catch up with your vision. And that's a huge departure from where we used to be. It used to be like, you know, waiting 10 years for that capability. And now it's almost like days, sometimes less.
Deb, can I just
add to that?
Yeah, just make a point that there may be some people in the room, I don't believe there are, but there may be some people who haven't started the journey yet. But the great thing about this technology is it's hugely democratizing, because all you need is the ability to express yourself in the English language, or indeed any language.
That's right.
And you can get up and running. And the other great thing is it's like TVs. There's always a better TV. And at the moment, the technology is progressing so fast that if you start today, in some ways you're ahead of the curve, because you're using the latest tech rather than the tech that someone's been building out from a year ago.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really great encouragement. If you haven't started, to Bill's point, you're not too late. And when I hear people say, I feel like I'm behind, one question I ask is, compared to who? Really? I mean, compared to the whole world. You're not, and you're still on the cutting edge if you're just getting started. I want to thank my panelists for this conversation. This is really awesome. Can I have a hand for my panelists?